You're listening to the Behind the Village podcast, where we invite you to join us on a journey to understand how to live a life worth living. Continuing on this trajectory we have going about work and life and how everything fits together, we wanted to speak to someone who was in the retirement stage of life, who has been through many big changes and different challenges, and to see what perspective they could offer us that we can't see from this stage of life that we're in. Mike Bailey has an interesting past when it comes to his work life. Beginning with a part-time job in his teen years at a grocery store, Mike became an electrical apprentice until he switched companies and worked for Uniroyal making conveyor belts, and eventually became part of the quality control team. Long shifts became tedious, and Mike decided to make another career switch. He applied to Beaver Creek Correctional Facility, where he began as a maintenance worker, eventually working his way up to assistant warden. From there, he moved on to the Ministry of Community Safety Corrections as an HR advisor for 15 years before finding photography and retiring.
I thought, okay, Mike, one day you will retire. What are you going to do when you retire? And so I thought, well, probably photography. I like being out in the outdoors. And that's how I got into photography. And I thought, but I guess I should buy equipment now while I'm working because I'll never be able to afford it when I retire. So that's what I did. All the extra money I put into equipment and decided to try photography. And then, of course, people were saying, well, you should sell your work. Well, I'm not that good. And so I started just, like everybody else, I started at the farmer's market at Otis Park. And I would sit back and listen to people rather than talk to them because it's like, now I'm talking your ear off. And I would listen to their comments. And so that's how I kind of picked up and learned. I just, self-taught, listened to people, accepted their criticisms and kept on going. And now I'm just loving life. I'm busy. I volunteer for too much. I don't know how to say no. And I get myself in over my head. Um, but, life couldn't be better right now. And I think if it wasn't for being willing to try all these different things, I wouldn't be where I am today. I think I see a lot of younger people saying, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I only want to do this. If you really don't start to highlight your ability to be flexible and working with people and speaking your mind without being boisterous, you're not going to go anywhere. And if I hadn't have taken these different chances, I don't know what I'd be doing today. And so I have no regrets.
What was made clear through our conversation was Mike's willingness to try something new, to try something he'd never done before, to take a chance and trust himself and his knowledge to get him to the next point in life. One question I had was, how do you know when it's time to make a change?
The biggest thing I noticed, and I'll use corrections because it can be a negative environment because, yes, you're dealing with people and you're trying to help them, but it's always negative. Everybody has a complaint or, everybody, it's poor me type thing. And as hard as you try, it almost seemed like you could never be successful in somebody. And I realize now that's wrong. But I think to answer your question, when I left there, it was because I was becoming somebody I didn't like. And so I knew at that time, I'm not going to live my life like that. I didn't like who I was becoming. I was becoming negative. I was becoming cynical. And I thought, that's not me. And I'm not going to bring that home to my family. So I thought, it's time for a change. I never left anything until I secured another job. But that I just couldn't take it. When I was, like when I was working as electrician, I had to change because of family commitments. I couldn't afford to be laid off. So there was a good reason there. When I left Uniroyal, I mean, it was a good paying job. But I left there because I I wanted to do something with my license, electrical. I left there because there was an opportunity to work for the government, and thinking ahead with family, they have benefits.
Listening to Mike speak about all these things he'd done in life, It started to feel like he had unlocked some secret to making it all happen. I wanted to know what that was.
I think it was sometimes not having enough confidence in myself,
Mm.
and, I had to overcome that, and there was, so many things that, that job brought me out of my shell. It was like I was a bit of an introvert, really, even though I like people and I like listening to people, I was afraid to talk to them, and when you get into that position, sometimes things come out of the blue, and you have to. And there was one incident to demonstrate that was, we brought in a no smoking policy for the whole institutions inside the buildings, and every institution was trying this, and we had a managers meeting in Kingston, which was our, headquarters area, and the deputy warden at the time was supposed to come and have a conversation with all the other managers of the institutions about how the non-smoking policy, how we implemented it, and how it was working and what wasn't working. And she didn't show up. So the warden says, "Mike, you're next in line up front and talk to them about smoking." Well, I had like 5 minutes,
Jeez.
you know. So and I guess having to do that, it was like, "Oh, I don't need to prepare a speech. I have the knowledge. I can do this," and I did it, and it was sort of that was the confidence builder that said, "Okay, I can do lots of things that I don't think I can do. I just have to explore it."
Yeah, that's something June and I actually talk about a lot is the idea, he likes to say the challenge is the way.
Yeah,
Like stepping out of your comfort zone or even being pushed a little bit outside of it and not being afraid because I think we doubt ourselves,
yeah,
you know, more than we need to.
that's right, that's right. And the other thing that I learned, and this is in speaking and just like what you're talking about is, you think that when you're doing this in front of everybody, they know all about what it takes to run a podcast, what it takes to do this, and they don't. And so the real truth is, you know more than anybody else in the room because you're the expert at what you're doing now. As I got older and you finally start to realize these things is, you know, you can really do whatever you want as long as you have the desire to do it and the dedication to learn and not be afraid of failure.
So if self-confidence is the key, how did he manage to actually do these things day to day? What was it like for him at this stage? How did he and his wife navigate everything?
I mean, it was so long ago. I think our oldest now is 50, you know. But I think the balance is a lot of times, and this could be just a personal thing with me, but I think it happens to more and more people is um, when you're working, you it's hard to turn off the 8 to 5 job. It doesn't matter what you're doing because you always feel I got to do a little bit more. If I don't do this little bit more, they'll think I'm not doing enough. And I think that's a common thought with a lot of people. And so you would do a little bit more and you weren't really recognized for it. It just you felt good for yourself because, "Oh, I stayed an extra hour and I did this. I don't have to do it tomorrow, and I can say it's done." But then tomorrow comes along and there's another issue, so I think I'll stay for an extra hour, but, it might be an hour and 15 minutes, and before you know it, you're getting up and you're going to work early because it's quiet and you can get some work done, and you're staying a lot later because you still think that you're not doing enough. And so then now it becomes, I'm up before the kids even go to school, and I'm leaving that responsibility to my wife. And then I'm staying late because I feel a real need to now, and I'm leaving that responsibility to my wife at the end of the day. And I was missing a lot of the important times with the kids. So I had to put that back into perspective too, and that was hard.
After gaining an understanding of who he is and life up until now, I was interested in his take on photography and the beginnings of this creative endeavor after he retired.
I think when I started to do photography, it was for me. I just like to be out in the bush and take pictures. And of course, my wife still says today, I'm glad you didn't start photography till digital came out, because if we had to pay for all the pictures you've done, we'd be broke and probably divorced, you know. And I'd say, yeah, yeah, I know. With photography, you just hit the delete button and you're done. But as I was doing this, and I kind of related it to work in a way of being able to explain to people and give them information that they weren't aware of. They didn't know anything about it, right? That's just not their expertise. And so I took photography as another way of teaching people. And I don't just go out and snap a picture and think that's, a photograph. Um, I call it pre-visualization. So before when I go out, I have an idea in the back of my head as to if I go out and take a picture of something, don't know what yet, um, what am I going to do with it at the end? And so that helps me in my process, just like thinking through of somebody's problem, how you're going to help them in the end. But when I take a picture, I have an end in mind as to what the picture will look like because of my familiarity with software that I can do little things. Am I going to just put it on the internet and let people see it? Or do I want to print it? And if I'm going to print it, do I want to print it on a canvas? Do I want to print it on a paper? Because it all has a different effect in how you're going to present that to somebody. And so a lot of times I will look for things that they're ordinary things that you and I might go by every day and see. And it's like you know, if you were going down the road and you saw an old hand pump just sitting on a beat up old well in a broken down cabin in the background, you probably wouldn't pay any attention to it. But I think there's a story there. And so I try to go and I'll take a picture of that pump in certain ways and with, maybe the how old broken down house in the background. But I might, in my mind, I might come home and I say, but it's an old pump. It's a rusty old pump. Who cares? But I try to present it in such a way that somebody might say, I wonder who pumped that handle. I wonder what family said that. So that's kind of my goal in all my photography, is to make people think about what happened in the past. It's like I did a whole series on doors. And it wasn't just because they were nice colored doors, but it was always wonder what the story is when somebody walked through that door and then came back out again. So that's, I mean, when I combine everything, I know I've gone off topic here, but when I combine everything, I want to show people things that are ordinary, but they're not ordinary because we don't see them anymore. There is a history there. There's got to be a history of how that person even settled in that place, what they did with their house. And so I try to, in some ways, present that to people to make them think. Or maybe it's a remember. Maybe they grew up um, on actually, like, I've got a good example. I did a picture. It was just off on the side road. I went out one day, it was in the wintertime, and it had been snowing, and I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna get out and get some fresh snow on the ground," and the sun, blah, blah. Well, by the time I got out here, it was only a couple streets back here in Severn, it started to snow again, and I was going down the road, and, "Oh, geez, I'm not gonna get any, but I'm gonna stay out anyway." And, there was an old barn, and it had a swing hanging from a tree, and then a brand new house over here. But the old barn was all the old stone and nice old window, but it was that swing that caught my eye because the snow was falling, and I stopped the car and I got out and I took a picture of part of the barn, but the swing in this old tree was what I really the subject. So I took a picture of that and I kind of liked it. And I thought, well, I'm gonna, I'll put that on a canvas and see what happens at the markets and so on and so forth. Well, it turns out I was doing a solo up at Creative Nomads shortly after she had opened, and I printed it big, and there was an older gentleman. Actually, this is a very interesting story. Anyway, there was an older gentleman that used to sit outside with another gentleman on the bench in front of Creative Nomads. I hung that picture, and he came in to see it. He bought it right away. He said it reminded him of the swing he had when he was a kid in his childhood.
Wow.
The story, I mean, and I thought, wow, this is really, really exciting because that's what I was thinking of, was just a child. So, it, I guess in that way, I'm very proud because what I thought of, what I took a picture of, how I presented it was somebody's memory that hung in their house and that also loved art.
It's so fascinating. I love hearing you talk about that process and what you're thinking and what you're hoping people will do and interact with your work.
Mhm.
And I think that maybe is true for all artists in various mediums, but
Yes.
I love hearing about that. It's just fascinating. Uh, and I love, like, I saw your doors
Oh,
and I loved that series, and I like to hear that thought behind it, and then knowing that that's what you were thinking is leaving that open to interpretation with
yeah.
other people, I think, is so interesting, and how that can connect us, and connect you as the artist and them as the people observing or
Observing.
experiencing the art.
Well,
So
and sometimes it's tough because I'm seeing the bigger picture. Like a lot of those doors were actually taken in an old burial in Tucson. And that old burial, was actually falling apart. And I saw the old buildings. I just took the pictures of the doors. But that whole door, when I think about how old is this burial and this building, I mean, but what history has gone through those doors? And that's why I sort of took that picture, those pictures, but because there was a story there, hoping that they could be anywhere, but I think I called it the story of doors. And yeah, I mean, how many people, how many famous people might have walked through those doors back in those days when they were doing something? So hopefully that message comes out.
it sounded to me like Mike had achieved such success over his life. So I wanted to know what success meant to him and what he was proud of.
If I want to talk about successes, success to me was I was happy at any job I did. I didn't care what I was doing. Um, and I think to me, success in your work makes for a happy life, success at home. Seeing the kids grow up, I guess, kind of the way I was brought up, and being respectful to people and situations. I'm just so proud of our kids. Um, maybe because they're a little bit like me, but no. I life has just been successful no matter what I've been doing, no matter what kind of you know uncertainty there has been, or health wise. I've always been very positive and looked at it. It's a success no matter what. And one of my favorite sayings I also tell my kids, because I practiced it myself, was when you have an issue, don't focus on the issue, focus on the solution. And they'll say that to me, Dad, what are you upset about? Yeah, blah blah blah. Well, Dad, you always told us don't focus on the issue, focus on a solution, and I got you through it. And a lot of times thinking like that and thinking positive was why I can be inventive, why I'm an artist. I look for the good in people. I look for the good in things. And when you find that, it's so much easier to resolve any situation. And when you help someone, when you are satisfied with something you've done, um, to me, that's success.
As our conversation progressed, we got into the topics of how negativity affects us and the importance of taking time for ourselves.
I try to watch a little bit of the news. I'm more interested in what's happening locally. And you can't help but kind of get involved in, oh yeah, this is happening over there, and this is happening south of the border, and it starts to get you on. And both my wife and I would just let's go out to the studio,
Yeah.
right? And we come out here and we just do our thing, and it just everything goes away
Yeah.
because you're focusing on things you like to do. And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I think today's generation doesn't do that.
No.
They've never been taught to explore some kind of a craft or explore something you really like to do. And I mean, there's so much, like, even when I think of our son loves to write. And so he does. When he's had enough, he just goes and he'll write some story about who knows. Um, and he doesn't care if anybody reads it. And that puts him in the Zen zone.
Yeah, it's so important, and sometimes you just wanna have a bit of a I call it potato time, where you're not thinking, you're just a couch potato, and then the scrolling starts on the phone, and then, the input of the, negativity and the this is happening he like you were saying, the south of the border and overseas, and you're just like, "Okay, I gotta turn this off."
Well, and you know what I find interesting sometimes is we've just become that world of, like you said, scrolling. And I think well, I'll pick on the younger generation, but I think they've lost sight of how important it is to talk. And because you've got that in front of you, it's so much easier to say nothing because, well, I don't know what to talk about. But all you have to do is ask somebody else about themselves. Let them talk.
Mhm.
I said, and when they're talking, and you're listening, it shows that you're interested in them, which makes them feel good, and you're learning from what they're talking about, and all of a sudden something will twig in, and all of a sudden you'll engage, and you'll be surprised how a conversation will start to go just because somebody asked you a question or you asked them a question. I'm involved with the arts immersion. We're dealing with vulnerable people or people with mental health, and so I've got a mentee, and we went out to Langman's. She loves to photograph and she really wants to learn photography, so on and so forth. And I said, okay. So we go out to Langman's Reserve because it's so peaceful out there, right? But you know, it was because there's so much she can take pictures of, and I can teach her about lighting and so on and so forth. So we went out just actually last Friday. We were out, and the ducks and the geese were galore. I mean, and it was such a beautiful, and I'm trying to tell her what to do, and she's taking pictures, so and so. And I thought, I haven't been out here, and I bet you over 10 years, and this is so peaceful. I don't have a camera with me, right? I don't. It's about her, and I thought this is wonderful, but the sun wasn't quite in the right position to get really good pictures. So I thought, I'm going to go out early. I'm going to get up early Saturday morning. I'm going to grab a coffee. I'm going to go out. The sun will be low. It'll be perfect. So that's what I did. And I was out there by about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I got out there. There wasn't a duck or a goose to be seen on that water, but I could hear them all in the background. So I thought, well, okay, I'm here now. I'm going to sit and wait. So I sat on a picnic table with my coffee. Didn't even have my camera in my hand. And I looked. And all of a sudden, everything started to go away. And I felt so calm. And I thought, this, I have to do this more often. I reminded myself, I have to do this more often. Just sit with your coffee and watch. Nature will take care of you. Well, nature always does.
Mhm.
And within about a half an hour, I was just about to finish my coffee. And all of a sudden, I could hear the geese honking. I went over by where the swans are over there, and I started to watch. And I'd never seen this happen before out there. But sort of in the center of Langman's, there's like a clear opening for a pond, and then there's all the reeds and bulrushes around it. And I swear to God, there was 50 geese all in a line swimming from that pond over to where all the stumps were and everything that I wanted to photograph. And they all swam down, and they were just kept coming. And then they'd find their little spot in there, and I was all set up for pictures. But I had a half hour of doing nothing but quiet, watching nature, feeling the breeze on my face, listening to the background, just looking at the water. It was so peaceful, and I think more and more people should do that. I need to do it more.
Yeah. No, 100%. 'Cause
It,
that sounds amazing, and I love, you've mentioned it a couple times, the patience where you've either felt like, the the geese weren't where you wanted them to be, where, talking about finding the barn with the swing, and you're like, "Ah, like, it's no there's nothing really," but you give it time, and you
yes,
just like you said, you let nature just kinda you let things unfold,
yeah,
and then you capture that, and I
and
think
then you capture it. Yeah, you,
that's what we're missing now, I
yes,
think, is there's such importance with pace and doing more and more and more and faster, faster, faster. We need to do the opposite now.
yeah.
We need to bring that back.
One of the tips that and I just thought of you'd said something, but even doing writing out your task list for the day. And I used to actually put in do nothing for this hour. Like, and so nothing else would, I wasn't scheduling anything. I just had to be careful that I wasn't taking that hour of free time and doing something else. But it started to remind me that, you know what, you're worth a half hour, an hour, whatever it is, every day. You know, even if you just go get a coffee, sit back and close your eyes. It's your time, and think about something nice, not about work, not about the world. Just think about, what you'd like to do if you could. Where would you like to travel if you could? And it just you have to do that sometimes, and maybe that's what people need to understand on their busy phones is your time, me time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it though. You're worth that time.
Yeah.
And I think so much of our worth now is on how much we can do with the time that we have, as opposed to that we are worth that time to be introspective or to,
Exactly.
reflect or to,
Yeah. And and God, I keep thinking all these things. Well, I remember when I was working with at corrections, and I said it was fast paced, it was negative and stuff, and I really started to get high blood pressure at the time, and a lot of it was just the stress of the work. And I'll be okay, I'll be okay, and I went and got the doctor, and I got pills, but I still had the high blood pressure, and work was really getting. This was getting towards the end before I left, and I remember my wife said to me, Michael, what do you want me to tell your bosses when you're lying in the hospital and you can't speak? That
Mm,
that really hit home about stress and not enjoying what you're doing and thinking that maybe you're not as important as you might think you are, because life's going to carry on after you're gone, except us and the kids. So
yeah.
that really hit home.
Looking back over his entire life, I asked Mike if he would change anything.
No, I wouldn't change anything. Um, I might do something a little different, because everything I did, as I said before, it led me to something better. If I changed anything, it might be uh, having more confidence in myself. If I think I can do something, well, then I can do it. And when an opportunity knocks, take it because it was meant to be. And I've learned that. So if I was to do anything different, is I wouldn't lollygag and think, oh, should I take this? Should I do this? What if I don't play the what if game? What if I take this and this happens and this? I've learned not to do that anymore. So, but those are the things I would change, because I just wasted a lot of time and frustrated myself. I don't think I
Yeah.
ever lost out on anything, but it certainly was a lot of back and forth and thinking about when deep down I knew it might have been the right decision. I should have went with it. Go with your gut.
Mhm.
I think it was right, but that's where the what if game comes in. Like, well, what if I take this position, or what if I do this? What will happen? And well, you just have to go with it and then deal with whatever. Just like I said, you deal with whatever comes up and focus on a solution and not an issue. I think all the decisions that I had made were all the right ones for the right reasons at the time.
Mm. Any advice that you would give, let's say, the younger generation or to your younger self?
You know, I think that they have to realize that um, not everything is the way you see it on TV. All the good things that happen, whether it be through getting a job, falling in love, having a happy marriage, or not having a happy marriage. Um, News seems to focus on all the negative stuff. And the world is not like that. Um, it's going to be what you make it. And if you decide that, people I think, have an internal sense. If you think that I'm not worthy of that person's friendship because they have more friends than I do, that's wrong. You can have just as many friends, if not more, if you want to go out and search for it and if you want to work at it a little bit. Not everybody's going to be all that you want them to be, but they will be your friends if you allow them. And you take the good with the bad, and you just be careful the friendships that you're looking for. Just don't take any friend because they're the first one that puts their hand up. There might be an alternative reason why they've done that. Choose your friends closely, but be willing to step out and try. The worst that can happen is you can say, I ain't going to work for me, so it's not my beliefs. I'll look elsewhere.
This was such a delightful conversation with Mike. I appreciate him taking me on a journey and being open to sharing helpful insight he's gained over the years. It's really helpful to hear different perspectives as we move through our own lives.
Thank you for listening to the entire episode. All the links and info you heard in this conversation will be featured in the show notes on our website. If you'd like to know more about anything we mentioned in this episode, make sure to check villagermagazine.ca/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening from. If you'd like to help this podcast grow, consider subscribing to our podcast channels like YouTube or Spotify so you never miss an episode. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.